From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello, welcome to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased to have with me Kavita. She's joining me live from the US. Kavita, thank you very much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. Can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and what your area of expertise?
Sure. Thank you for having me. So I'm basically an AI practitioner of over 15 years. I started doing AI when it was just a very research-oriented topic.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, we didn't even have the tools that we have today. So even for tools like SVMs, you have to write all the code for data preparation. So that's where I got my start. So I went from research to doing more research in my PhD program. And then when I graduated, I was solving a lot of industry problems, solving AI for business type of problems like recommendation systems, classification models. And this was across different industries, like working on code, working on healthcare data, so a variety of domains.
Mm-hmm.
And today I'm a consultant. And I've been doing this for the past 5 years. And I've also authored the book, The Business Case for AI. And my focus is very much applications of AI from a very practical perspective. So not so much research oriented, but more practical perspective.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And again, thank you very much for being here today. So, just to get started, companies that they are starting to think to explore the possibilities of AI. What would you say are the first step they should take to successfully implement AI in their organization?
Yeah, so the first step, especially for medium to enterprise, large businesses, is trying to understand where the actual AI opportunities are. Because often what I see in practice is that people just come up with cool ideas and then they
Hmm.
go after those ideas. And then it becomes a prototype, a tool, but then they don't have consumers because nobody really needs it. It doesn't really solve a real business problem. So I would say look for the really high impact AI opportunities, and that's what you should go after. So one or two of them will be pretty easy to implement. Well, maybe
Hmm.
things where the tasks have been done manually, and maybe with the use of AI, you can now improve that whole workflow. So look for those, classify those as into buckets like this is all the problems in customer service, this is all the problems in HR. So you will know where your competitive advantage really is going to be by just looking at those problems.
Okay, so first they need, of course, to do kind of an assessment of what are the areas that needs improvement, and then try to apply AI to it, right?
Yeah, and once they've identified the problems, next step is to like frame it. So actually go through each one and
Hmm.
figure out what pain point it solves. Is it really worth using AI or can you do it manually? Or is it cheaper to just do it manually? Because sometimes
Okay.
having one person to solve the problem versus implementing a whole AI system can be much cheaper. So
Yeah.
framing the problem is a very critical step. And I talk a lot about this in my book because I think this is the key in either pursuing or eliminating an initiative.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And I like this. Like, if you really don't overcomplicate things, if you can do it with, still manually cheaper, that's fine. Now,
Yeah.
then let's take the next step. So if I'm today a business and I figured out, as you said, like I frame it, I know that I need to apply AI here. But how can I know as a company or as an organization that I am ready actually to adopt AI? Like, what are the common challenges that I might face in the initial stages?
Um, so I would say a few things. To know whether you're ready to apply AI, you need to look at a few things. One is if you have a manual process that where you are doing a lot of repetitive work and the data from that repetitive work is available in some form, and this process is painful. By maybe introducing some level of software automation, it can significantly improve maybe the number of tasks you complete. So that's a good indicator that this might be a good AI problem because data seems to be there. We could use some software automation, maybe or maybe not, it's AI. Um, and it has been solved before. So you understand the problem and you'll know how to measure success because you have this baseline, which is the manual approach of doing things. So when you put AI in the loop, then you can say, hey, we are getting 60% accuracy doing this manually, but with an AI system, it's 90%. So there is a comparison mechanism right there. So that's
Mhm,
one way to look at it. The other
mhm,
approach is more high level, enterprise level approach where you're creating a strategy to prepare the organization to become AI ready, which means once you put AI into production, you should be able to repeat that process over and over again. So you have AI in different parts of your company. So that is more strategic, and that requires looking at your data infrastructure. So are you collecting data? Are you collecting the right type of data, the format? So all of that data related pieces.
mhm, mhm.
Then
You might,
yeah,
yeah, please go ahead.
yeah. In my book, I discuss 5 elements of AI preparation. I call it B kits. So budget, culture, infrastructure, data, and skills. So these 5 elements is something you have to look at for enterprise level AI strategy.
Yeah, great. Actually, I was about to ask you about the book because you mentioned the book a couple of times, the business case
Yeah.
for AI. Like, only very high level, what are some of the key takeaways that can guide businesses in building a strong foundation for AI integration?
Yeah. So common takeaway is data has to be in place. You need to look into your infrastructure. So your IT infrastructure may not be ready to support AI systems. So you'll have to look into how to expand that. How do you conduct a pilot to see which platforms you want to start using, and yeah, so to evaluate different platform options, and
Mm-hmm.
also your cultural readiness because some companies, as you know, they're very afraid of automation because of
True.
losing jobs and a lot of risk factors like biases. So they are very wary of implementing AI. So cultural element is also critical, and that comes with education and
Yeah,
skills. The
yeah.
last one is skills. You need the data scientists, you need your AI experts. So are you willing to hire these people or do you want to outsource? So you'll have to think about how you're going to implement those solutions.
Yeah, I think it's common because I remember back in days when we started to talk about digital transformation and digitization. The same, I would say, frictions business start to see because of the culture, which is, I think, it's very important, and the skills, as you mentioned, is something really important. Now, like, from your experience, like, have you seen examples of companies that really successfully started with AI and they benefit from it? Like, if I want to reframe it another way, what would be the biggest benefits that organization would see when they adopt AI in their initiatives?
The biggest near-term benefits would be, for some cases, increase in revenues. So
Hmm.
if you're an e-commerce company, the use of AI has a huge potential for boosting revenues because of the discovery and recommendation capabilities that it can offer. So it depends on the industry. And then, like for manufacturing, the use of AI also limits revenue loss because you're doing things more in real time versus stopping the production line for humans to do the work, like um, quality control pieces. So even if you're trying to detect like cracks and dents and problems in like bottle caps that you're manufacturing, an AI system can take an image of that and determine if indeed there's an abnormality in the cap. So you don't need a human in the loop to do that. So that immediately makes the production line more efficient. So you get a lot more throughput. So it does affect revenues, but at the same time, it also affects efficiency. It affects employee burnout. So it affects multiple things. So I would say
Yeah.
it's very problem dependent.
That's great. Now, one thing that caught my attention when you were introducing yourself, and you said, like, you covered from business perspective. Like, how is AI in the business world different from the academy or academic
Yeah,
world? I would say.
that's a very good question, and I'm surprised that it rarely comes up. Um, so the research world is more predictable. So sometimes you know what data you're testing on. Sometimes you know what problem exactly you're solving. So it's very, very narrow. And those data sets that you evaluate on over and over again come from standardized benchmark data sets that researchers have published. So every time a new model comes up, like from ChatGPT to something more recent, GPT-4, they may be using the same benchmark data sets to test how well each task performs. But in reality, our problems are not so well defined. We have company specific data. So maybe you're working in an agriculture domain. So your data may look very, very different from what's being benchmarked. So if you're going to trust that benchmark evaluation numbers, then you might be surprised to see that, hey, it works so poorly on my data. Why is that? And also, industry problems are more messy. So there is not one model that can solve the problem beautifully. You'll have to have like one model to solve majority of the problems, and then a rules base to solve the edge cases, and then humans for fallback. So it's often messier and it's more hybrid rather than a single model for one problem.
Yeah, that's great. So if I want to make an analogy, like when we used to be in school and college, we used to like study math and everything. It's like neat, and like
Yeah.
the graphs look. But in real life, we know that when we do the experiments, like things get a little bit messy.
Yeah.
And I think because we deal with real data, it's as you said, like the real data would be like not as the one we used in research, which is just great. Now you mentioned a little bit about ChatGPT and generative AI. Like, of course, I would discuss from two perspectives. Like, first of all, from you with all your experience, and you work with a lot of businesses. Like, where are you seeing it like mostly used from industry perspective? And what do you expect from tools like ChatGPT? Because we know like generative AI is not only ChatGPT, but where do you see like the future is bringing us to from business perspective?
Yeah, the future is moving pretty fast. So as of now, I would say um, idea generation is a good use of tools like ChatGPT because of its underlying problems like hallucination. But there's also another problem, cost. So a lot of the text classification tasks or things that you would train a model to do, which now you can easily do with ChatGPT, costs a lot of money. So each call to the API costs
Mm-hmm.
the money. And this is not just after deployment. It's also through experimentation that you're paying, then through testing and then deployment. And then after that, for years to come, you are tied into this solution versus you training a simple machine learning model, which solves the task maybe equally well, but you have control over the data, what goes in and what comes out, and you can change it over time. So it's a one time cost which you have to maintain, but there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
more control. So it depends on which way you want to go. Are you okay with getting tied into this API, which could change over time? The performance can change under the hood over time. So your company's performance also will become unpredictable. So you'll have to think through those risks and the costs. So as you know, risks of tools like ChatGPT, because it tries to generate, it's sometimes making up non-factual answers, and it happens all the time. And
Yeah.
also the answers are less predictable. So one time it may say A, B, and C, next time it may say something completely different. So it's less predictable than uh, training your own models for a specific
Mm-hmm.
problem. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think ChatGPT will shine in helping you generate data to train those specific models. So you can create a lot of synthetic data using ChatGPT. You can use it for things like paraphrasing. So if you need sentences that are paraphrased in different words, or headline creation. So those things, it's safe to use a tool like ChatGPT because it's always a human who's verifying, is this something I should be using or not? So I
Hmm.
would say it has its uses, but I wouldn't say that that's the only option right now. Like, you should use generative AI. So that's not the case.
Okay, so I can understand from what you are saying, like
Yeah.
it's not as some people mention, a silver bullet for every use case, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It has its use cases. And also, it depends on the company's policies. They may not want to upload proprietary data to a third party API. So then what are you left with? Maybe problems where it's public data that you're using and you are allowed to send that to a third party API. So
Hmm.
for those other problems, you'll have to find different ways of solving it. Maybe use ChatGPT to create that synthetic data for you and then train your own model, or just train your own model using the data that you have.
Yeah, unless I'm not sure if they would be able to come with something to run the model. Of course, like I'm doing something very theoretical in a cheaper way locally, where the data would be processed locally. I know, like it's like you need too much compute power to do this. But this is something I raised also previously with someone, what mentioned to me that it's sometimes hard to do, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you mentioned about the risks, but when people, when they discuss about the risks, there's some ethical aspect. So what are the ethical considerations that businesses need to be mindful when they decide to utilize tools like ChatGPT?
Yeah. So one of the most common risk, like I said earlier, was the hallucination aspect. So if you're asking it to come up with answers to specific questions, the answers may look very accurate just by looking at it. But when a subject matter expert checks it, they may find faults in it. So factual accuracy is at stake with any generative AI type tools. So that's the first risk. So maybe you don't want to use it to generate text, or even if you use it to generate text, there should be a way to validate that what it's generated is factual. So having that check, final check in place is critical for generative AI type tools. The second is it may have underlying biases. So let's say you're using ChatGPT to make predictions on who should get a loan. You'll say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this person has this background. Should they get a loan or not, like an education loan or not? So it may have its underlying biases. Maybe it thinks that specific groups should not get loans, or younger students should not get loans. So whatever the biases is, and that can perpetuate to the model. And you will not know of these biases because you have no control over the data that it's trained on. So you are less aware. And another thing that with tools like generative AI that people miss is the evaluation component. So when we do traditional ML, we are forced to evaluate the model in different ways. But with generative AI, people are not just building applications over the model without evaluating how well it's doing on the task. So I don't see much of like accuracy numbers being generated on a specific task, for example, like question answering. So you need to have that evaluation piece, regardless of whether using Gen AI or just pure machine learning.
Yeah, like this is, just brought to my mind like how companies that own these large language models, they have a huge responsibility, I think, with the data that they own actually. And like if as you said, like they have a biased data that might give a really bad decisions, and even like sometimes it would give even wrong assumptions. I don't know, like really it's something that business should be aware of when
Yep.
deciding to adopt. Now, like of course now everyone talks about generative AIs, but is there anything, like, because you are also close to a lot of businesses, and also like you have your experience and you did the research part as well, everyone is talking about generative AI, but is there anything, like you predict that also to come to the surface anytime
Yeah.
soon that also would be, interesting for us to adopt?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of research going on in common sense reasoning where we actually want to reason. So right now with ChatGPT and generative AI, it's not really reasoning, it's generating based on what it understands, based on historical data. So it's not reasoning like us humans. But what would be nice is if you can apply some common sense knowledge to answering questions. So that will give more factual accuracy to responses. So that is currently in the works. So you may see more and more of common sense reasoning in the next 3 to 5 years. And also, I think generative AI itself, they're going to have some way to maybe check factual accuracies. There's research going on fact checking these types of tools. So that will add a layer of, I think, safety for us to use these tools more reliably.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And do you see any intersection between AI and other emerging technologies that businesses will benefit from?
Um, there could be, I mean, I think there already is like AI and blockchain, but I think AI and cybersecurity has the biggest
Hmm.
impact today because we have a lot of problem with cybersecurity, high volume problems, very hard to detect. But with AI, we can solve a lot of those detection issues. So I think that's where there's a lot of potential, and I think a lot of governments are focusing and investing in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the cybersecurity part, and actually multiple guests they mentioned that a lot of people who are in cybersecurity now they want to quit within the next 6 to 12 months. And now the
Oh,
hope is, yeah, so the hope is that AI can take a little bit of their, I would say, stress and all the things that they have to deal with. But again, the challenge is bad actors might be using also AI
yeah.
on the other side. So now it's like we have AI fighting another AI, which is an interesting thing that we need to see how it will end in the futures.
Yeah.
Now, um, now I talk sometimes with different businesses from different sides, and they tell me, like we don't think AI is for us. Like AI is only for enterprise. Is that true?
For small businesses, AI is for them, but maybe not building something from scratch. It
Mm-hmm.
can be tools that are already published, like we have a lot of text to speech. So to read articles, I use a lot of text to speech because sometimes I want to just rest my eyes and I want something to read to me. So, which is pretty good, which if you use Microsoft Edge or there are lots of tools, apps that'll do text to speech. And maybe speech to text, like audio from meetings to text transcribed,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can then analyze what you discussed and pick out specific information to put in your proposal. So there's a lot of use cases for us small businesses to use AI also, and ChatGPT to generate ideas, um, just content ideas. You don't have to use it as the final thing, but even if you ask a few questions, it can spark ideas in your brain that you can then explore further. And also storytelling. So some of us are not good in storytelling. So let's say you want to write a bio of yourself. So you have a rough bio and you wanted to rewrite your bio. So
Mm-hmm.
using the rewritten bio, you can then just edit and make it look more accurate. So lots of
Yeah.
ways to use AI. Yeah.
Great. Just I want to give a hint for people who would be listening to us. Um, Try to instead of giving orders to ChatGPT, try to ask questions, because just a personal experience, I get always better results. And as you said, try to ask it to make it in a storytelling way, or try to put some um, like put some, how they sell sentiment, like tell it, okay, tell it in a funny way or tell it in a professional way. So when you give this command, I would say in the prompt, I get better results usually. Now we talked to Kavita a lot about chat gpt, but what are some of the other tools that you use yourself and you find them useful?
Yeah, I use a lot of the text to speech, speech to text for my own work. Uh, Microsoft has a PowerPoint designer feature within.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's AI generated, but it's really good. Like use a lot of visuals in my slides, and now instead of hiring somebody to go make those slides look better, I use Microsoft's Visual Designer, and it does a really good job. And also for blogging, I use like title suggestions from tools like ChatGPT. Um, it gives me decent results, which I tweak and then make it my own. So
Nice.
yeah, so this is these are some of the ways that I do use AI in my personal work.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Just to add to what you said, I use the designer as well. But if you are into using some tools like Canva, for example, so Canva, and if you need to be on the paid version, and I'm not affiliated with Canva in any way. I pay them actually. So they had now they call it AI assistant kind of.
Mhm.
So if you want to design a slide, you put what you are trying to do, and then it generates like 5 to 6 slides for you, and then you can complete from there, which is excellent. I use, and again, I'm not affiliated with any of these tools, guys. So I use Jasper AI. Jasper AI also same as Kavita mentioned. It can give some blog posts and titles and these kinds
Yeah.
of things. So I use it as a tool. Now, one of the things, and I'm asking a professional because people, and maybe we repeated multiple times on the show, but really, do you think that AI would replace and eliminate a lot of jobs? And what should we do in order to save our jobs? Like, what's your thought about this topic?
Yeah, I think if your job is so specific that you're doing one specific task, like maybe you're just inspecting bottle cap cracks and dents, then it's highly likely those jobs are going to be reduced. So the maybe you have 500 jobs, now you may have just 10 of those jobs. But your role then becomes something different. So instead of being that QA engineer who sits and does that work, you're going to become maybe the data generator for those systems, because AI systems, they can't learn on their own. They need good quality data to make high quality predictions. So you can become the data generators for the systems. You can become the quality assurance managers for AI systems. So let's say it makes a lot of mistakes. So you have to go in and debug. Why is it making those mistakes? Then feed it
Right.
back into the model, and then the model gets retrained. So
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be working closely with these AI systems rather than doing the work yourselves, which is probably a good thing, because humans tend to get very distracted and bored on repetitive tasks. So if you have a software mechanism helping you, that's already a good thing. So even when I do my research, I always wish there is a tool that can do some of the groundwork for me, and I just go through that results, because that saves me a lot of time. So I think our workflows will be more AI augmented, and we will become more the people who were working in those roles will become the quality assurance managers, and they'll have roles around these AI systems.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we will see AI in a, let's call it, like, decision making role or managerial role? Can we rely on AI to have decision making roles?
Decision making on specific tasks, like does this item have a defect or not? So like specific tasks. But I don't think it's going to do the work that a manager does, because manager is not just doing specific decisions. They are solving problems between team members. They are corresponding with their upper level management. So there's a lot that humans bring into the picture that AI systems cannot just replace. So all that
Mm-hmm.
collaboration, the emotional aspect, conflict resolution. So all of that, I don't think an AI system can handle well. And even if it does try to handle, it's going to take you down some rabbit hole. It's going to use some therapy tools and say you need therapy or something that it's learned from data. And yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So this is what I always tell anyone who asks me. Like, don't be scared, because AI needs always actually someone to give the prompt, right? So now,
Mhm.
because people are now familiar with this term prompt, chat
Yeah.
GPT. So, but it applies to AI in general, and you know better than me, of course. Like, AI is like, think about as a black box, and you have an input and you have an output. So
Mhm.
always the input needs to come from a human, right? Like, and we need to give the orders to get the results. And you know, this completely, even the autonomous systems, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kavita, even an autonomous AI system actually needs also, you know, the spark or the ignite of it. It comes from a human, right?
Yeah, the initial data generation has to come from some human process, so which has already been done. The data is still very essential to these AI systems, and we generate the data.
Yeah, are we living a hype, or is it a moment, you know, the AI moment? Like, what do you think?
I think it's both. So we have a lot of hype, but that hype is good thing because it has caused a lot of companies and leaders wanting awareness. So what I've seen is that a lot of people who read my book, they started off with generative AI, ChatGPT, and then they wanted to learn more about this whole space of AI. And then they read my book, then they learn, oh, it's not just that simple. We need to think about all this risk. We need to think about data preparation. So it got them into AI and thinking about AI, and now thinking through strategies, whether it's enterprise or small businesses, they are thinking through strategies. So I think it's a mix of good and a little bit of bad.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Personally, I'm with you. Like, it's both, because AI is not something new. It's something that has
Hmm.
been, you know, in the from last century. Actually, the research is started. But yeah, I think what ChatGPT mainly did, it brought it to the, you know, to the
To
scene
the
more.
forefront, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where everyone now start to talk about AI. But yeah, I agree 100% with you. Now, Kavita, I have a very, you know, famous last question. Is there anything that you wished I asked you?
Um, yes, actually, I was thinking about that last question. Um, so I was talking about the hype, right? So
Mm-hmm.
with the hype comes a lot of dangers with AI. And the danger is not that AI systems are going to become super smart and take over all humans, but
Mm-hmm.
it's in the misuse of this technology. So people who don't quite understand how it works, they start building applications on it without understanding the risks. And that has a lot of downstream problems. It is going to have a lot of downstream problems. And we've already seen this in a case where a tool like ChatGPT took somebody on a rabbit, like I said, on a rabbit hole through therapy based talk, and that
Mm.
person ended up taking their lives. So that kind of danger will become more prominent. So what I suggest is that people think through the risks and think through the evaluation aspects of AI.
Okay, that's really
Yeah.
informative. Well, Kavita, thank you very much for your time today on this episode. I really appreciate the time and, you know, um, the information that you provided. Where they can find more about you and the book?
Yeah. So my website, so www.kavita-ganesan.com, and I guess you'll add that to the show notes.
Right.
Yeah. And also my company website is opinosis-analytics.com.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great. So I will make sure that this will be in the episode description, as you mentioned. Thank you very much for the time today. And as usual, this is how I end my episodes. To the audience, if you have any questions, any feedback, you know, as Kavita mentioned, you can reach out to her. Like, you can learn about the book and, you know, more about her work. If you have questions about, you know, this topic or the show in general, you can reach out to me by email, LinkedIn, or Twitter, where I'm most active. If you are interested to be a guest, like Kavita was today, you can also reach out to me and we can arrange for that. And as usual, I hope you enjoyed the episode today. And until we meet in another episode, thank you very much. Bye bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.